With over 7 billion streaming services, it seems like a new blockbuster show is released every week, boasting movie equivalent CGI, world famous actors, and a massive production budget. So it makes sense that almost all of the top 10 most expensive shows of all time were released over the last 5 years. Saying this, there are still some surprises within the top 10, with some of the budgets making sense, and some proving the point that more money doesn't always equal better. In this video, we list the top 10 most expensive shows of all time, including a show that cost nearly $500 million to make. So without any further ado, let's get started. In at number 10, we have Apple TV's See.
Centuries from now, almost all humans have lost the ability to see.
Made by Peaky Blinders and SAS Rogue Heroes creator Stephen Knight, See is set in a dystopian future where all humans are blind. We follow Jason Momoa and his tribe as they protect newborn twins who are born with the ability to see. See was shot in Vancouver, and the production team went above and beyond to create the post-apocalyptic setting of the show. According to Momoa, the production team created a village from the ground up and drained an entire lake for filming. See ran for 3 seasons of 8 episodes and cost $15 million per episode, so the cost per season was $120 million. Number 9. The Mandalorian.
Look outside. They are waiting for you.
Airing in 2019, the first Star Wars Disney Plus show brought back the feel of the original trilogy and introduced Grogu, aka Baby Yoda, and Din Djarin to the world. The Mandalorian is a space western with incredibly impressive visuals, thanks largely to the creation of new technology made by Industrial Light and Magic, the Volume. A revolutionary improvement to green screen, the Volume stage projects a 360-degree LED screen around the actors, giving them more context in scenes and providing some fantastic visual backdrops to the Mandalorian show. Oh, and of course, the Baby Yoda puppet cost a reported $5 million too. With an estimated budget of $15 million and 8 episodes per season, The Mandalorian costs $120 million per season. Number 8. The Crown.
Let's not overcomplicate matters unnecessarily. My name is Elizabeth.
The period drama covering the most important events of the past century for the British monarchy through the point of view of Queen Elizabeth II and her family, the Windsors. It's no wonder that The Crown has such a large production budget, with sets replicating the real look of Windsor Castle, Balmoral and Number 10, and incredibly detailed hair, makeup and costume design, on top of a star-studded cast, consisting of Matt Smith, Claire Foy, Olivia Colman, Dominic West and Helena Bonham Carter. With a budget of $13 million per episode and 10 episodes in the season, The Crown costs $130 million per season. Number 7. Game of Thrones.
Lannister, Stark, Tyrell, Baratheon. They're all just spokes on a wheel.
Needing no introduction, Game of Thrones is undoubtedly the most culturally influential show to come out in the last 2 decades. Game of Thrones features a ton of characters, massive sprawling battles, and was filmed for years over 6 different locations: the UK, Croatia, Iceland, Spain, Malta, and Morocco. Like any show with a large cast, the budget for Game of Thrones grew as the seasons went on, with some of the cast reportedly netting $1.2 million per episode in the final season. Whether it be the huge battles, immaculate costume and set design, Starbucks coffee costs, or the CGI dragons, it's fair to say that Game of Thrones was worth every penny in terms of the visuals and acting performances. Although perhaps some of that money could have been spent on a better script for Season 8. Game of Thrones cost around $15 million per episode, and had 10 episodes in its first 6 seasons, then 7 for Season 7, and 6 for Season 8, so I've averaged it out to 9 episodes per season. The total cost per season, therefore, is around $135 million. Number 6. The Sandman.
Your waking world is shaped by dreams.
The fantasy series based on Neil Gaiman's comic books starring Tom Sturridge as Dream, the ruler of dreams and nightmares. The reason for Sandman's big budget is due to the large ensemble cast, including Boyd Holbrook, Charles Dance, Stephen Fry and Gemma Coleman. The Sandman is a very imaginative comic, with different realms, beings and fantastical elements. And to make all of this look believable on screen, it required a lot of money for CGI, hair and makeup, costumes and set design. And despite the first season being wildly successful, creator Neil Gaiman said that perhaps it was not enough to warrant a second season, as it was such an expensive show to create. Gaiman's skepticism was perhaps ill-placed, as the second season has been greenlit. The Sandman cost $15 million per episode and has 11 episodes in season 1, coming to a total of $165 million per season. And at the midway point, for number 5, we have The Pacific.
But this war, our war, I have to believe that it's all worthwhile.
The 10-episode limited series The Pacific was set in World War II, on the island of Peleliu, with Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks and Gary Gertzman as executive producers, as well as Hans Zimmer composing the score. The Pacific had big name backing from its inception. Praised for its authenticity and attention to detail, The Pacific spared no expense when it came to action, set pieces, weaponry and costumes. With over 3,000 uniforms made, 50,000 rounds of blank ammunition, and hundreds of prosthetics and exploding squibs, the high-quality reenactment for the Battle of Peleliu certainly didn't come cheap, costing $20 million per episode, and with 10 episodes in its one and only season, The Pacific cost $200 million, which is $30 million more than Iron Man 2, which also came out in 2010. Number 4. House of the Dragon.
I will not be made to choose between my brother and my daughter.
The prequel to Game of Thrones had to be a hit after the controversial ending to Game of Thrones, and HBO pulled out all the stops to ensure that George R.R. Martin's book adaptations could continue to be the cash cow that Game of Thrones was. And one season in, House of the Dragon seems to have done what they set out to do, with multiple awards and positive reviews from critics and fans alike. Why was House of the Dragons more expensive than Game of Thrones? Well, you've got the 9 CGI dragons and a huge cast. It's only season 1, so conceivably the budget could perhaps double in its final season, perhaps season 4 or 5. Season 1 had a budget of $20 million an episode, and 10 episodes in the season, which means that House of the Dragon cost $200 million. Number 3. WandaVision.
We are an unusual couple, you know.
Oh, I don't think that was ever in question.
What did the MCU do after the decade-defining Avengers Endgame? Well, they released the third most expensive show of all time, WandaVision. The production budget is perhaps surprising to many, as the first half of WandaVision was pretty much just Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany in a house, going through the different eras of sitcom TV. But to recreate these different eras of TV meant that different cameras, different costumes, different techniques, and different specialists were needed for every episode. And then in the last few episodes of WandaVision, they were very action heavy and CGI dependent. You can also safely assume that Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen were paid handsomely too. With a reported budget of $25 million per episode, and 9 episodes in total, WandaVision cost $225 million, which is more expensive than the original Avengers movie and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Number 2. Stranger Things.
He's hurting, but he's still alive.
From the 1980s small-town story where a boy goes missing, to the sci-fi horror epic that it became in later seasons. Stranger Things episodes have very long runtimes, equivalent to a feature film, with episode 9 of season 4 having a runtime of 2.5 hours. Another reason to explain such a high budget is the cast, who now boast a much larger profile, and are paid increasingly more with each following season. Stranger Things has a budget of $30 million per episode, and with 8 episodes for season 1 and 3, and 9 episodes for season 2 and 4, I put an average of 8.5 episodes per season, making a total season budget of $255 million. Now on to the big one. The most expensive show of all time is Rings of Power.
Why do you keep fighting?
There's a tempest in me!
After a fierce bidding war, Amazon beat out Netflix and HBO to obtain the rights to J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth. Rings of Power takes place in the Second Age, thousands of years before Frodo, Aragorn, Gimli and Legolas. We follow a young Galadriel, Sauron and potentially Gandalf as the Rings of Power are created. The show had some fantastic visuals, real attention to detail with costumes, multiple location shooting and huge sets being constructed, which explains some of its incredible budget. Despite middling reviews and being only the 15th most watched show in 2022, Rings of Power won multiple awards for its score, costumes, makeup and special effects. Rings of Power had 8 episodes in its first season and cost, wait for it, $58 million per episode, making the total cost of the series $464 million. Which means that the budget for season 1 was more than the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy. This total doesn't include the $250 million that Amazon paid the Tolkien estate to obtain the rights for the show. But if we were to include that, Rings of Power would come close to costing $800 million, which is an absolutely staggering number, and one I don't think will be topped by any show, certainly over the next few decades. So there you have it. The most expensive shows of all time are, from 10 to 1, C, The Mandalorian, The Crown, Game of Thrones, The Sandman, The Pacific, House of the Dragon, WandaVision, Stranger Things, and Rings of Power way in front. So what are your thoughts? Were the budgets for any of these shows a surprise to you? Are some of these shows good value for money, and are there any which don't come close to validating their huge budgets? If you're new here, then perhaps consider subscribing to Film Club. I review all the major films and shows on their release, as well as the occasional video essay. Thank you for watching, and see you again.